And welcome into the Cards Hub post-game show brought to you by Hot Shots. St. Louis is home for all games all the time since 1990. Find yours at hotshotsnet.com and also sponsored by DraftKings. I'm Sara Dayley alongside Brenden Schaeffer, and Brenden chatting a little bit earlier via text about the game and hoping that the Cards could pull off a road win number 2, but they fall short to the Braves in the home opener against the series in Atlanta for the Braves by a score of 7-6. And it came down to the wire there with that last at bat, but the Cards couldn't quite pull it off. And they had a strong showing early on, but once again, just kind of fell apart with the bullpen.
Yeah, the bullpen continues to be a problem for this Cardinals team. And when you think about, Sara, relative to last year, the Cardinals had a bullpen that in these one-run games were able to really propel them, and they had a really strong record in close games. And now it's some of the same cast and crew that's just not having the same level of effectiveness. Obviously, they've had to figure out how to replace Andrew Kittredge from last year's team, and you haven't seen necessarily the consistency from your right-handers in that group to do it. Phil Maton before tonight was probably one of those names that you'd have pointed to as a positive, but he gets lit up, and it was a rescue mission again as Jojo Romero this time trying to come in and help out, and he's not been able to be himself from last year. So you're looking at those two guys and others that have tried to come in and be the difference, and they just haven't been able to. And so you're looking at a Cardinals team that is in free fall right now when you think about the way that they have performed on the road in particular. That was tough. The offense made a game of it at the very end, and then a little swing for Arenado puts an end to the rally. That's just a tough way to go down. You almost would rather they wouldn't have mounted that charge at the very end there, Sara, because they kind of got everybody's hopes up a little bit. But that's especially coming off of a 4-game sweep in Queens, to have it end that way was not fun for anybody, no doubt.
And you don't really want to title them the comeback Cards or the comeback kids yet because they are so young. I know that there's been discussion about being young and learning and opportunities, as they're going through the season. We're still under just shy of 30 games for the season. So there's still a lot that's progressing and developing, but they put on 2 in the top of the second, rallied another one in the 6th. And then in the bottom of the 8th there, the Braves just tacked on those 5 runs. You had a really good performance out of Fetty for the most part until it kind of caught up a bit. But as you said, Maton there, he threw that chin music up and inside, unintentional, kind of apologized for it. The ball got away from him. And after that, it just kind of unraveled from there. Do you think that's where it kind of was the turning point? Or do you think there was something prior to that that really caused the Cardinals to kind of unravel?
Honestly, the turning point might have been that overturned call where you feel like you've got an out in the inning and suddenly things start to get away from you, and they take some time, maybe get you out of the rhythm, and they overturn that call at first base. And from there, things start to devolve a little bit. Yeah, and Maton had been so solid really prior to the Mets series, and he didn't give up any earned runs in the Mets series, but had an inherited runner score on him yesterday. Earlier in the series, there were the unearned runs. It's just, if it's not one thing, it's another, Sara. That's sort of been the way that it's gone for this Cardinal bullpen. You can look up and down that list, and really outside of Ryan Helsley, I would say that you haven't had a group that you feel really good about. And of course, we haven't got to see Helsley in a while because the Cardinals haven't had a save situation and a late lead for him to come on and close. So when the others are the guys that we're seeing the most of, and they're the guys kind of collectively going through it, that's where you end up in a pretty rough situation right now if you're the Cardinals.
Fetty, typically a pitch maker, 2-0 heading into tonight. He had a no-hitter against Pittsburgh going through 6 innings. Like you said, he's had solid performances, so we expected another deeper inning performance out of this starter because we haven't seen much out of the Cardinals. But just one little setback for him. You think his next rotation through, he'll look pretty solid, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I thought he looked good tonight, and you continue to see the rotation piling up quality starts. It's not that you've got guys going 7-8 innings and throwing shutout baseball every time out, but the consistency of the rotation is something that, like, if you had said, the Cardinals are on a 5-game losing streak and here's their road record, you gave all the stats, you'd think, the rotation is probably really going through a tough spell. That's not really been the case at all. They have been extremely consistent, probably over the last handful of days during this losing skid. You could say, like, the worst start was Miles Mikolas only because he didn't get through 5, but even he gave you a chance to win. They've got guys right now giving them a chance. And it's just been a combination of the bullpen, as we've discussed a little bit, in the offense as well, just not having the day-to-day consistency. But they put up 6 runs today. Like, it doesn't go on anything other than the bullpen tonight, unfortunately, because even though at the end you would have liked to have seen a better opportunity for Arenado to maybe put a ball in play beyond, 3 inches in front of the plate, overall, when they score 6 runs, that's supposed to be enough if you've got the bullpen rolling the way, at least the way that it did last year, right?
Well, especially when you have Contreras that comes up and then puts one out to tack a couple
Yeah.
more runs on. That, like you said, gives you a little bit of hope. It kind of gives you that little glimmer, and then all of a sudden it's not exactly what the Cardinals had hoped would pan out. But some of our comments and subscribers that are contributing to our conversation here tonight, talking about Ollie and what's his job at this point. I do know he got tossed tonight, and I don't think he really knew he got tossed at first when he was arguing because Steve was still on the mound continuing managerial skills. But at this point, I mean, arguing balls and strikes, I kind of agree with them on that last pitch. But then at the same point, a little frustration there I kind of sensed out of Ollie.
Yeah, I think he was like, you know what, you can take me off the mound if you want. I'm changing pitchers, though, so just give me a minute here. I'm doing something. If you're Ollie Marmol, you got to be frustrated with the way things have gone because they haven't had quite the consistency on offense. You're getting that starting pitching that I think any team would dream of right now with the consistent 6 innings, 2 runs, 6 innings, 3 runs. It's all you could really hope for. But the fact that they haven't been able to turn that into any wins, and they feel so close. It'd be one thing if you had like the Boston series where you lose an 18-7 game. They end up losing all the games over the weekend by no more than 3 runs in any of those games. And so that's a spot where you just have to you try to shake off that frustration, but it's difficult because tonight was another game that was in the balance. They certainly had every opportunity to win it, and in multiple ways they weren't able to figure out how to do it. But if you're Ollie Marmol, you say, look, like this is the way that the bullpen functions. I have to be able to turn to Romero in these spots, Maton in this spot. And, Kyle Leahy does his job. But other than Leahy, and maybe I should have mentioned earlier, like he's been probably a pretty steady head and a guy that's been able to get the job done anytime Ollie calls upon him. Other than that, it's just not been consistent. And if you're Marmol, every day you wake up and go to the ballpark and say, well, if I get 6 out of my starters, that's great. Right now, to have confidence in innings 7, 8 to get you to the 9th inning in Ryan Helsley, there's just not a lot of confidence that those guys are going to be able to get it done. At least watching it from home, that's how we feel. I'm not sure how Ollie feels, but I'm sure he's got to have that frustration, as you mentioned.
Well, yeah, and he, in the pregame show, discussed a couple of things where he said this club's young and they're going to learn from their mistakes and they're going to develop. And I understand, again, on sub 30 games in, but at some point, you have to stop using that as we're a young team, we're developing. I mean, we kind of got that at the end of last year, and now we're going into this season and they're supposed to have players that can contribute and step up. And you can't keep depending on the farm system, AAA, AA. He also mentioned that there is a big difference between AAA and the bigs. Once you perform at the bigs, you have to stay there. If you're going to hit, you got to stay and you got to prove your reason to be in the bigs. And so some of that conversation, listening to his pregame, I was like, well, that's interesting that he would bring that up just because you are looking at a young team, but I don't know. It was just kind of interesting that he fell back on that answer, I guess, it just caught my attention.
Yeah. And I mean, it may be relevant too, because somebody's got to go down to the minors tomorrow, right? Mason Wynn's going to be back. He's eligible to come off the IL and I think is ready to do so at the minimum stay on the IL. And so you're trying to figure out exactly what that's going to look like. And, as an example, prior to tonight, a guy like Thomas Saggese, who has been performing, one of the few right-handers to be pretty consistent lately. That was the guy that came up initially when Wynn went down with the injury. So you'd say, well, he's not somebody that should necessarily go back. And you think about the number of players that the Cardinals in recent days have seen kind of fall off in their statistics, guys that are supposed to be part of the core or at least part of that young group of players ascending. Like you want to see what you have this year in Alec Burleson and Jordan Walker and some of those guys. And they had kind of fallen on some hard times. So it is interesting, but at some point, the players that are on this roster and that are part of this organizational depth chart going to have to be the guys that perform at the big league level. And it's frustrating because they feel very close right now, but close isn't getting them very much other than just kind of digging a hole in the standings with the way that they're coming up with some of these 1-run, 3-run type of losses.
And Brenden Donovan, I mean, he's hitting 356. The guy is clearly contributing, but you can't rely on him and his bat to carry you through a series. That's not going to do the job. If you have someone that's contributing 1 or 2 hits here and there. And I was listening to Claves and Joe earlier today, and they were talking about that you can't just rely on people that are going through a hot stretch to carry the club through the season. You really have to put collectively a team together to make sure that they do their job. And so I think that's where some of the strength, I guess, is also showing some of the weakness. These guys have the talent. They just got to put it together and put the right match out on the field.
Yeah, and as Sean here mentions, the young players need to develop those talents, but it can be bad for the mental morale to not be winning anything when you feel like you come to the ballpark every day and you're so close on so many of these, but you don't get rewarded for it for a week straight. I mean, that's the situation we're starting to look into, and then you can start to really let it sink in on the road in particular when you think about the what was it now 1-10, the road record away from Busch Stadium. They're 8-4 at home, Sarah. Like I mean, that's unbelievable. It's not league worst, I don't think, unless the Rockies took a road win today because they were 1-11. But you're pretty much down there in the doldrums with teams like the Rockies and the White Sox when it comes to the road performance. And it's still early to where you could say, well, they've only played 4 different teams on the road, but one of them was the Pirates, and they couldn't find a way to beat them. The other teams that you played are pretty good ball clubs. But at the same time, it's like you're going to play a lot of different ball clubs. You're going to play 81 games on the road, and right now, 1-10. I mean, that's a number that sticks out like a sore thumb, unfortunately. And Jeremy mentions the bullpen. What happened when you don't go out and get bullpen arms? I understand that to an extent, but I also think if we're talking about a transition year, this was supposed to be the year where, hey, a Chris Roycroft would take a step forward. You really solidify JoJo Romero. You solidify like guys that we haven't even seen yet, like a Riley O'Brien. Ryan Fernandez, for goodness sake. I mean, he was supposed to be somebody that really takes a step forward and solidifies himself as an 8th inning guy, and it just hasn't happened, Jeremy. So the one guy that went out and got Maton, he's finally starting to show some cracks after a really strong start. Everybody else, though, it was some of those internal options, some of which performed well last year, and we're just seeing, unfortunately, straight line regression across the board from the bullpen.
I see that Justin Hutchins is referring way back to AA or down in the farm system, saying the Springfield Cardinals can't even come in and get outs. But you talked about the confidence there with that last comment about the, baby birds being in the bigs, so to speak. And Mason Wynn, okay, so he's not been completely on fire this season, but he goes down in AAA, hits 2 home runs in one game yesterday. That has to be, I don't care if it's AAA, AA, at some point that has to make you feel good that like, okay, I'm not completely like lost in the situation. You know what I mean? You put the bat, you connect with the ball, you feel good about yourself coming up and facing big league pitchers and big league action. I totally get it. Different situation, but the mental game is a true thing. It's not like that just goes by the wayside.
Yeah, honestly, I think Mason Wynn's going to be in a perfectly good spot when he comes up. He had, looking at the stats here, a 6-game hitting streak prior to the second to last game before he was injured. Really started to find it. He went from a 0.000 batting average on April the 1st all the way up to 244 about 8 days later. So he was starting to find it. Unfortunately, just as maybe he hit his stride was when that injury came. And it was kind of crazy the fact that he had been maybe dealing with the back soreness for a little while during that stretch and yet still finding ways to perform. So the fact that they were able to give him a little bit of time and then see the power, obviously, in that game in AAA, something that you can hopefully be excited about. But like you said, it's not going to be Brendan Donovan carrying you. It's not going to be, Mason Wynn alone carrying you. You need a bunch of guys to be going in the right direction at once. And so if you're looking for the silver lining, which obviously right now it's hard to find them, the fact that Wilson Contreras does hit a home run, that's something you can at least hang your hat on and hope that it turns him in the right direction because they need him to be one of those guys carrying the lumber. He's been their best hitter 2023 and 2024, statistically highest OPS in both of those seasons. They need Contreras to be going, and I think if they get that, it might be a step in the right direction for the offense as a whole. But, yeah, you can't just have one guy going at once. You have to have it be a collective team effort, as you mentioned.
So who do you think can contribute to a 30-plus home run? Do we have any hitters this season? I mean, is there one or two? Because you have to have someone that's going to do something, right? Or are you just going to play manufactured ball all season long?
Can't. I mean, we've seen it, Sarah. It doesn't work. It doesn't work to play just manufactured. You got to have a combination of both. And they've actually, that's the crazy part. It's like during this stretch of losing, they've still had moments where they've manufactured or they've come up with a clutch swing. You can point to Brendan Donovan on Friday night with the home run making it 4-4 before Lindor hit one 1.5 miles off of Ryan Fernandez. You can look at the Thomas Saggese double over the weekend where it scores 2 runs. Suddenly a game that it didn't really feel like they were in, they're right in the mix because they've tied it with one swing. Like they've had those clutch hits, but then it's like, all right, we did it, but you got to get over the hump. And sometimes the power swings that can really get those runs in bunches, which we unfortunately saw too little too late in tonight's game with the 3-run 9th inning. Like that's sort of what you're looking for from the Cardinals, and to find that more consistently. Yeah, I'm looking at this lineup trying to answer that question about who's going to be the 30 home run guy. Here's a damning statistic. And I don't know that I don't believe this changed tonight. Contreras with the only home run. This was his second of the season. Ivan Herrera had a 3 home run game. Nobody on the Cardinals has more than 3 home runs on the season other than Ivan Herrera. He's leading the team in home runs, and we haven't seen him for 2 weeks. And he did it all in one game, matching everybody else's home run totals. So maybe that's the answer, Ivan Herrera, except for you're not going to see him for another couple of weeks. Hopefully it's not much longer than that. Outside of him, I see Newt Barr as a good 20 to 25 home run guy, not 30. Maybe you'd say the guy who led the team in homers last year, Alec Burleson. Well, guess how many he has right now? None. He hasn't hit one, and he's been a primary option in DH. He's got an OPS of 585. I know that Oliver Marmol loves him some Alec Burleson, and I've come around on understanding, like, guy that puts the ball in play, there's a lot of potential here. The numbers are going to end up being the numbers for Burley, and when you look back to the last couple of months of last season to now, that's not a guy that's necessarily indicative of a contending lineup batting fifth in your order. I think he can still become a good player, but Sarah, that's what this season's about, finding out, hey, this guy that is going to be part of the young core, this other player, Jordan Walker, that's supposed to be part of the young core, what do those guys end up developing into? And then the next guy that comes in, Chaim Bloom, can say, okay, these are the pieces and parts that I'm going to use to then build the roster around. But you got to be able to find those guys stepping forward. And as much as we like Alec Burleson, that's an example of a player that has just not produced enough. It's a 239 average and a 585 OPS is not going to cut the mustard when you're basically not really a defensive player. You're filling the DH role because you can hit. That's the theory, and the Cardinals aren't getting enough from that spot either. We can go up and down the lineup. I hate to single one guy out, but that's really been the story as you're looking at the struggles of this team right now. You're looking everywhere and saying, yeah, it's a problem.
I mean, you have a very, very valid point. You have Segasi, who did really well stepping up the last couple of games and out tonight, a right-handed pitcher again, but then you have also changes in the lineup. But you see someone who, again, Ollie has referred, if you come up, you hit, you stay, you got to produce the big league level, but there is a big difference. And you have someone that can perform at the AAA level and then comes up to the bigs and maybe struggles a bit. So if you're doing that tossing back and forth with trying to figure out what that matchmaking system is, guys are going to be a little off as well. I mean, if you're going back and forth trying to figure out the system because they can't figure it out themselves. I mean, if they're struggling and you're trying to shuffle everybody, that's got to be a little bit confusing as well. And then Fernandez, one thing to another and to stay in and stay up, but then he's not getting ideal results for Ollie. So what are they going to do with him in the bullpen? I mean, do you see him staying in there, or what do you feel in that situation? I
mean, I think Ryan Fernandez is going to end up with another opportunity at some point. He's going to pitch again before they option him, because I thought if they were going to do it, it would have been before today's game. And clearly they are sticking with him a little bit stubbornly. You can understand it because last year he was as reliable as anybody in that bullpen, but he does have options, as Samuel mentions. And I had said last night, I thought he would be somebody that you might see option today for like a Riley O'Brien, or just try to do anything, right? Because you have all these games stack up, and it's a shame to waste basically a full week of starting pitching that has done its job. That rotation has gone a full turn through, and they haven't gotten any results from it, despite a bunch of quality starts and no starts in that span that didn't give you a chance. The worst of the bunch was Palante, where he had 1 inning and gave up 4 runs. He went 6 and gave up 4. So you've had basically not quite a full week, because today's only, what's today? Monday? That was Thursday's game. So it's only been 5, but that's the start of this little stretch where the Cardinals just haven't been getting enough done. And you can look up and down and say, yeah, the bullpen has really been the cause of that. And Ryan Fernandez has been a guy who last year was so reliable, and still this year, Oliver Marmol needs to be able to rely upon him. If he's going to stay in the Major League bullpen, Oliver Marmol can't be gun shy about using him. And I know that's going to frustrate people, because they'll look to the manager and say, well, why did they bring this guy in? Look up and down that bullpen and tell me who you'd like to see come in instead, because you might have an answer, but it may not be somebody that's going to produce either. Like you might have said, Phil Maton, I choose him tonight. Well, so did Ollie Marmol, and you saw where it got him.
Yeah, exactly. And you could tell Maton was frustrated. I mean, it was obvious that he went out there and wasn't happy with what he was doing and his performance on the mound. But so Fetty went, 6 innings?
6 and 2, I believe.
Yeah, 6 and 2.
6 innings, 2 runs. That'll play unless you have the bullpen situation that the Cardinals keep having.
Right. And so then it's almost like a flip flop. It feels like you have guys that go short as a starter and the bullpen has to go long, or you go 7, 6, 7 solid. And then it's the opposite. It's like you can't figure out the timing or the right combination. And as Brian Quinn mentioned, so what happened to JoJo? He went from part of the Trinity last year to Chocomatic this year.
I called it the triumvirate. You had the triumvirate, the 3-headed monster of JoJo, Kittredge, and Helsley last year. It was so good. And now JoJo is falling on hard times. Kittredge is gone, and Helsley's just waiting for a chance to pitch. For 5 days, he's going, I'd love to throw in a same situation, but Cardinals can't get me a lead. I mean, that's tough when you went from it being a strength of your team. I said, look, this Cardinals team, I do believe, and people are going to puke and say, oh, they're just, putting sugar on it again. I thought this Cardinals team certainly coming in had the talent to be a 500 or better ball club. The problem is, if you looked for one area where the regression could really haunt them, it was the bullpen, where they were so good in one-run games. And now you see that's the only thing that's changed. And in fact, the rotation has been better so far this year than it was last year. The lineup has scored more runs so far per game this year than it did last year. And yet, look at the record. I mean, they're free-falling because what changed? The bullpen has not been reliable. And that's a hard thing to realize, because it does become deflating. I imagine for the players, it's the same thing. You play 6 good innings of ball, you scratch out a 3-2 lead, and you say, here we go, let's go. What happens? You blow it, and then it's like, well, here we go again. Credit the Cardinals offense for scoring 3 in the 9th, because who could have blamed them if they had just rolled over, because it's just, another Groundhog Day where we get it done, and then we can't have our bullpen close it. I know the players don't look at it that way. They're all going to be good teammates, but that has to be frustrating at a certain point.
Well, yeah, the roller coaster of emotions. You're trying to carry people and pick teammates. I mean, Wilson Contreras has talked about it openly in interviews. He said, like, we're a good club, we're doing this, we're doing that, and trying to be motivational even when he's not, or he's not producing. And then you have guys that are producing, and it's up and then it's down, and it's up and then it's down. And like you said earlier, it's not like they're not putting runs across the plate. I mean, they're getting runs across the plate at some point. It's just not enough to where they can't give it up or hold on to it. So it's not like we're going out and getting, I mean, at some point, I guess 20-0 is the same as 2-1, but you know, it's a loss.
You feel like you had a chance in the 2-1 game, though. And that's the part that has to be frustrating day after day. It's getting to that point. Ghostface Gaming mentions that Liberatore a good option to improve the bullpen, and Mats can stay in the rotation. I want to correct you on that, because a good starter will forever be more important than a good reliever. This is a very unusual situation right now that the Cardinals are in, where you can say a full turn through the rotation, you've had everybody perform, and yet you've lost all the games. Usually a bullpen's not going to be this egregiously bad. I mean, you're going to have guys that are struggling, but when it's collectively everybody struggling at the same time, it does look a little bit more glaring. But you're not going to take Liberatore out of the rotation where he has been nails and say, well, he's going to be a good second lefty for the bullpen, so we need to switch it. However, I do think you'll get to a point where Steven Matz, he's going to be in the bullpen this week and then move back into the rotation temporarily after the off day kind of gets by him. I think you'll look at his next start or two, however many more he gets, and if he performs well, he'll have an argument to be in the rotation too. But yeah, if you don't find your bullpen options within that roster by moving guys around, start to look to Memphis and see what you can't come up with, because I don't think there's any. I think at a certain point you want to be stubborn and you want to trust your guys, but eventually you have to look at it and say, the guys that are on this roster right now collectively are not getting it done in the bullpen. Start moving the parts that are movable and just getting them a refresh. It doesn't mean they're gone for good. They're gone for 10 days, 15 days, and then you can maybe find them back effective for you later on after a stint in the minors, if that's applicable to anybody with options.
Yeah, or try and find a mid-reliever. I know it's not really common nowadays. It can go like more than 2 or 3 innings, that maybe one game a series you can toss out there and eat up some innings just to try and get a W on the right side. But Aaron Dotson talking about, I'm not even mad anymore. I just expect to lose every game. So I guess if you win, that's the bright side. That's a perk.
Yeah, that hurts. No, that's not what the Cardinals want either when it comes to kind of fan apathy. There's no doubt about that.
Right. Well, once again, the Cards Hub post-game show is brought to you by DraftKings. Baseball season is officially underway, and it's time to step up to the plate with DraftKings Pick 6. Think of DraftKings Pick 6 as your fastball right down the middle. It's the easiest way to play for cash and take a shot at a big win. Just select 2 or more players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Sara Dayley here on the Cards Hub postgame show alongside Brenden Schaeffer, and we've been discussing the Cards' loss by 1 run tonight. They attempted to come back with the final score in Atlanta, 7-6. The Braves on top. The Braves now 9-13. The Birds 9-14. And unfortunately, I feel like the last couple of shows that I've done, Houston, Pittsburgh, we've had very similar records against the opponents, except we've always been on the wrong side of it. It's always one game that we've lost more or one less win that we've had against.
Yeah.
And we beat some of the best pitching in baseball. Like, the talent's there. It has to be frustrating for everybody, as frustrating it is for us to watch this game, Brenden.
Yeah, and when you talk about, well, you lose that series by a game, well, suddenly you wake up and you're 5, 6, 7, 8 games below 500 the longer that this goes along. So they're going to have to find a way to, nobody's going to bring them out of this hole. They're going to have to climb out of it themselves. I think if you were to say, hey, is there room for it to happen that way? It's because, all right, some of these close games are bound to turn around. They have to find the first one, though, Sarah, because when you feel like you're going to lose and something like you're just waiting for whatever is around the corner to make the game go wrong on you, it's coming. Like, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So they've got to find that first one. And maybe they catch a bit of a break, Sarah, in that, and you hate to see anybody ever get injured, especially top players around the league. But Spencer Strider was supposed to pitch tomorrow, and that ain't happening because he's on the injured list for Atlanta. So if you're the Cardinals, say, you don't even have to say anything about that if you're a player. But if you're a Cardinals fan, you can look at it and say, all right, whoever they're going to throw instead, this has to be a game where the lineup carries you. It could be a 9-5 win for all you're concerned, but lineup's going to have to maybe do the work and be ready for a potential margin for the bullpen, because the bullpen has been known to give some runs up late, and they might need the offense to have their backs tomorrow to be able to climb out of the skid.
So what are your predictions for the rest of this series? The Cardinals, we've discussed it, 1-10 on the road.
Yeah.
I don't really know where to go from that. I mean,
hopefully
2,
up.
3, right. Well, clearly, I mean, if you're going to keep going down, it's nothing's going to happen this season, I hope.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, you really can't go much worse than I feel like where we're at. And I hate saying that. That's painful. You can see it's painful for me to say that because I don't even want to think that way. But at this point, what are you going to do?
You're going to find a way to win a game. And I think tomorrow's a great chance to do it because Palante's on the mound. He's gotten you 6 innings just about every time you've gone. So hopefully it's a case where the bullpen's not really required to go very much. Now, that was true tonight. And still in the few limited innings that they pitched, they found a way to give up this game. Palante might need to take it upon himself to go 7 tomorrow. I don't know. He's more of a guy that I think you feel pretty good about going 6 if he can be pretty efficient. He's done a nice enough job this year at eliminating walks. So that's where you start. But I actually think they've got an even better chance to win the next game because you're facing a pitcher with a 7 ERA to match Miles Michaelis' 7 ERA. However, Miles is in the last couple of starts. I'm not like people hear me say, hey, actually about Miles Michaelis, and they're like, why are you forgiving a 7 ERA? I'm not. He was absolutely awful on Sunday in Boston. It happened, but that was one game that really is still costing his ERA. Last 2 times he's pitched, he's given the Cardinals a chance to win. I'm not like over the moon celebrating with balloons, but if he goes 5 innings and gives up 2 or 3 runs, with the way that the offense should be able to perform, get up off of that should give you a chance. Sarah, That's all it is. And so I look, people are going to say, oh, sunshine and roses, you're going to predict a series win. Fine, I'll predict a series win because I think if they do what they need to do tomorrow, Palante is going to give you 6 innings and 3 runs, and the bullpen is going to somehow find a way. Ryan Helsley's going to pitch regardless, like he just has to pitch eventually. And maybe Kyle Leahy pitches another inning because he's been your only reliable guy. And maybe they find a John King spot. I don't really know how it's going to happen, Sarah. Give me like 6-4 Cardinals tomorrow. I think we're on the post game again. So if I'm wrong, then we can come back and call me an idiot. But I think they've got a chance for Palante to be the stopper. And then it's really going to be about the offense, too, in the Michaelis game. He's not going to go more than probably 5 innings. They have been very protective in that third time through of making sure he doesn't get exposed. It's going to have to be the offense. But you did see a little bit of that in the 9th inning tonight, so maybe they can carry that over. That's all I got. I don't know that there's a lot of hardcore analysis that's going to feel very, very much better about what we're seeing until the Cardinals find a way to get a win.
Understood completely. So if we want to wrap it up, if anyone has any final comments they want to quickly post in the comment section, we would welcome them 100%. But once again, the Cards Hub postgame show is brought to you by Hot Shots. St. Louis is home for all games, all the time since 1990. Find yours at hotshotsnet.com, and also sponsored by DraftKings. So Nick Jensen, please stop saying the Cardinals have great talent. Have you not watched the Cardinals over the? Yes, I actually have.
Believe it or not, I have watched them a lot. I've done 750 podcast episodes about this team. I think I watch them. The thing of it is, I don't think the Cardinals have great talent. I think they have some solid talent and some talent that we're going to find out really what they're made of. Are they going to continue to underperform for a third year in a row offensively? Because, Sarah, if that is the case, maybe they're not that talented. Like at the big league level, you mentioned the difference between triple one. When you get to the end of this season, and if we're looking at the same guys all kind of struggling at the plate, there might be a reckoning where Chaim Bloom comes in and says, this isn't the core that we had hoped it was. There's some pieces I can pick from it, but I'm going to have an overhaul, because you can change a lot of different things. They've had different hitting coaches over the past few years. They've had a lot of the same players, though, and now it's a year for a lot of them where it's like, can these guys take the step forward that we have been sort of promised that they might be able to do? And you're going to get a new hitting coach that everybody's raving about. If they can't do it here, you do have to start to look in the mirror and say, all right, maybe the talent isn't quite what we thought it was. But, Nick, I wouldn't say it's great. I wouldn't say they're the most talented team in the league. I wouldn't say they're top 10. They might not even be top 15 in that regard. I think there's talent in the room, though, to be able to be competitive. And right now we're seeing the Cardinals competitive within individual games. We're not seeing them win any of those games on the road. And so you've got to find a way to get there. But no, great talent is for teams that are destined to win the World Series. I'm not looking to the Cardinals to do that this year, but they can show more than what they have over the past 5 games. That's for sure.
Yeah, and Cardinal Nation's not going to settle for that. I mean, the fans are already frustrated with the last couple of seasons, and deservedly so. They're used to a great product out there, and if they can't put something out there that's worth putting butts in seats, I hate to say it, then they need to reshuffle and rethink what they're doing and the decisions they're making. Chris Wagner, thanks for bringing us all the best. Go Cardinals. Only way to go is, well, that's for sure.
Only way is up.
Speak to the truth, friend. Only way to go is up. 100%. I love that.
Well, there you go. I know everybody's on the edge of their seats, Sarah, waiting to see if the Blues can score a goal. But whether the Blues do or don't score a goal, the Blues crew will be here for the postgame on Sports Hub STL in just a little bit. And regardless of the way that this Blues-Jets game ends up, there will be hockey on Thursday in St. Louis. And I'll be down there. I'll be joining the Blues Hub postgame for that one. So hopefully if the Cardinals don't get things rolling, Sarah, maybe the Blues can at least give us something to be excited about in St. Louis. There's always that possibility.
100%. That's Brenden Schaeffer. I'm Sara Dayley, just along for the ride. Once again, we appreciate you joining us on the Cards Hub post-game show. If you like this conversation, subscribe, comment, join us on all of our shows and our podcasts. You can also check us out at sportshubstl.com. But have a great evening. Stick with the Cards. Hopefully they'll turn things around, and we'll see you right back here next time. Have a good night.